A husband's seemingly perfect marriage unravels when he uncovers shocking evidence of his wife's infidelity. What starts as suspicion spirals into a web of deceit, emotional confrontations, and revelations as he discovers the depths of her betrayal. With a manipulative lover refusing to let go, the stakes rise, forcing the husband to make difficult choices about love, trust, and whether their marriage can survive. As tensions escalate and dark secrets come to light, the story delves into the raw emotions of heartbreak and the fight for redemption. Will their relationship withstand the ultimate test, or will it crumble forever? It was the summer of 2018 in the quiet coastal town of Edgewater, where life moved at a slower pace. The waves rolled lazily onto the shore, and the scent of salt hung in the air, blending seamlessly with the aroma of fresh pastries from the town's only bakery. This was a place where everyone knew each other, at least they thought they did. The story begins with Lucas and Clara. They weren't a perfect couple, but who is Lucas, 35, was an ambitious architect known for his meticulous nature and love for order. His life revolved around blueprints, deadlines, and the satisfaction of seeing his designs come to life. While Lucas thrived on routine, Clara, 32, was his opposite. A free-spirited photographer, she lived for the spontaneous moments that turned ordinary days into memories. They had been married for 6 years, a union that everyone in town admired. Their house, nestled at the edge of the cliffs overlooking the ocean, was a reflection of their lives together. Lucas's structured sensibilities were evident in the modern design of their home, while Clara's creativity shone through in the vibrant paintings and photos that adorned the walls. It was a house that told their story, or so it seemed. On the surface, everything appeared fine. Lucas woke early each morning, grabbing coffee before diving into his projects, while Clara often wandered the cliffs at sunrise, camera in hand. They would come together in the evenings, exchanging stories over dinner, but beneath the polished exterior, cracks were beginning to form. Lucas had noticed subtle changes in Clara over the past few months. She had become distant, her laughter quieter, her conversations shorter. She began spending more time away from home, citing new photography assignments or errands that kept her out late. Lucas tried to ignore the gnawing unease, convincing himself that her busy schedule was simply a phase. One particular evening, as Lucas sat alone in the living room, a storm brewed outside. The rain lashed against the windows, and the sound of thunder rumbled in the distance. Clara had told him she'd be late. Another last-minute assignment, she'd said. He sat staring at his phone, scrolling aimlessly, hoping for a text from her. Hours passed, and the silence of the house became almost unbearable. When Clara finally returned home, it was past midnight. She slipped through the front door, drenched from the rain, but smiling faintly, as though nothing was amiss. Lucas, seated on the couch with a glass of whiskey, looked up and asked, "Long night?" She nodded, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "Yeah, the shoot ran late. I didn't expect the storm to hit so hard." Lucas tried to read her expression, but her tone was casual, nonchalant. He wanted to believe her, to let it go. But something about the way she avoided his gaze set off a warning bell in his mind. The days that followed only deepened Lucas's doubts. Clara became increasingly secretive. She seemed glued to her phone, often smiling at messages she would quickly dismiss if Lucas entered the room. When he asked about her day, her answers were vague, as though she were reciting lines she had rehearsed. One afternoon, while Clara was out, Lucas found himself alone in their home office. He wasn't one to snoop, but an open drawer caught his attention. Inside, he saw a notebook that didn't look familiar. Flipping through it, he found sketches and notes, Clara's usual style, but tucked in between the pages was something that made his heart sink. A receipt for dinner at a restaurant he didn't recognize, dated a week ago, on a night she had claimed to be working late. Lucas stared at the receipt, his mind racing. He wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Perhaps it was for work, a meeting with a client. But the nagging feeling in his chest told him otherwise. That evening, when Clara came home, Lucas decided to test the waters over dinner. He casually mentioned the restaurant's name. "I heard the new bistro downtown is supposed to be great ever been." Clara froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Lucas to notice, before answering. "No, but I've heard good things too. We should try it sometime." Her response felt too quick, too smooth, and Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying. Over the next few days, Lucas began paying closer attention. Clara's behavior grew more erratic. Longer hours away from home, phone calls she would take in hushed tones, and an unfamiliar perfume that lingered on her clothes. The once familiar rhythm of their life together now felt like a stranger's melody, and Lucas found himself questioning everything he thought he knew. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas sat in their bedroom, staring at the framed photo of their wedding day. Clara's smile in the picture was radiant, her eyes full of love and promise. He wondered if that version of her still existed, or if it had been replaced by someone he no longer recognized. When Clara came in, she seemed distracted, barely glancing at him as she changed into her pajamas. "What's wrong?" Lucas asked, his voice calm but firm. "Nothing," she replied, too quickly. "Just tired, it's been a long day." But Lucas wasn't convinced. "Clara, we need to talk." She turned to face him, her expression guarded. "About what?" "About us," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I feel like something's changed. You're distant, and I don't know why." Clara hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Lucas, you're overthinking things. Work's just been hectic, that's all." He wanted to believe her, to let her words soothe the growing ache in his chest. But the doubt was too loud, too insistent. In the days that followed, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Clara continued to come and go, her behavior as erratic as ever. And then, one night, everything changed. Lucas received a call from his friend Ethan, who worked at a restaurant downtown. Ethan sounded hesitant, almost apologetic. "Hey, Lucas. I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I saw Clara tonight. She was with someone who wasn't you." The words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He felt the room spin, the weight of betrayal settling over him like a heavy cloak. "Are you sure it was her?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, man. I'm sure she was with a guy, and they looked close." Lucas hung up the phone, his mind racing. He didn't know what to think, what to feel. All he knew was that the life he thought he had built with Clara was beginning to crumble. That night, as Clara slept beside him, Lucas lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He knew he needed answers, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to face the truth. The next morning, he made a decision. If Clara wouldn't be honest with him, he would find the truth himself. Lucas couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at his chest anymore. After the call from Ethan, his world felt like it was slowly slipping through his fingers. For years, he had prided himself on being someone who trusted without question, someone who believed in the bond he and Clara had built. But now, every moment they spent together felt like a lie he couldn't escape. The following morning, Lucas woke up to the sound of Clara bustling in the kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a seemingly normal start to the day, but Lucas couldn't shake the tension between them. He watched her from the doorway, noticing the way she hummed to herself, as if everything was perfectly fine. "Morning," Clara said with a quick smile when she noticed him. "Morning," he replied, his tone flat. As they sat together at the breakfast table, Lucas decided to probe gently. "What's your plan for the day?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. Clara shrugged. "The usual, a couple of client shoots downtown. Then I'll probably stop by the gallery. Should be home by 7. Lucas nodded, his face neutral, but inside, his thoughts churned. He couldn't tell if she was lying or if he was just paranoid. Either way, he needed to find out. After Clara left, Lucas made a decision. He grabbed his keys and followed her. It felt wrong, an invasion of her privacy, but the doubt was eating him alive. He trailed her car at a safe distance as she drove into town. At first, everything seemed normal. She stopped at a small cafe where she often worked on editing photos. Lucas parked across the street, watching her through the window as she ordered a coffee and opened her laptop. For a moment, he wondered if he was overreacting. But then, after about an hour, Clara packed up her things and left the cafe. Not toward her next supposed shoot, but toward a different part of town altogether. Lucas's heart raced as he followed her to a small park, where she parked her car and walked to a secluded bench under a large oak tree. Waiting there was a man. Lucas watched from a distance, his stomach sinking. The man greeted Clara with a warm smile, and she responded with an embrace that lasted just a little too long. Clara and the man, whose name Lucas would later learn was Adam, sat on the bench, their heads close together as they talked. From his vantage point, Lucas couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. The way she laughed at his jokes, the way she rested her hand lightly on his arm. It was a side of her Lucas hadn't seen in months. For a moment, Lucas considered confronting them right then and there, but something held him back. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the sinking realization that he wasn't ready to hear the truth. Instead, he snapped a photo with his phone, proof of what he had seen, and drove away. Back at home, Lucas sat in the living room, staring at the photo on his phone. The evidence was undeniable. But instead of feeling anger, he felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. How had they gotten here? What had gone so wrong in their marriage that Clara felt the need to turn to someone else? That night, when Clara came home, Lucas acted as though nothing had happened. He listened as she talked about her day, recounting details about the client shoots she had never actually done. Her lies came easily, and that hurt most of all. Over the next few days, Lucas struggled with what to do. He felt like he was living a double life, pretending everything was fine while secretly uncovering the cracks in their relationship. He began digging deeper, looking through Clara's social media and emails for clues. What he found only confirmed his suspicions. Messages between her and Adam, filled with inside jokes and plans to meet up. But amidst the betrayal, Lucas found himself wondering if he bore some responsibility for what was happening. Had he been too focused on work, too caught up in his own routines to notice Clara's needs? One evening, as Clara sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, Lucas couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who's Adam?" he asked, his voice steady but cold. Clara froze, her eyes widening for a split second before she quickly masked her expression. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me," Lucas said, his tone sharper now. "I've seen the messages, I've seen you with him." For a moment, Clara said nothing. Then she sighed, setting her phone down on the coffee table. "It's not what you think," she said quietly. Lucas laughed bitterly. "Isn't it, because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty clear." Clara looked down at her hands, as though searching for the right words. "I never meant for this to happen," she began. "Adam, he's an old friend. We reconnected a few months ago and it got out of hand." "Out of hand?" Lucas repeated, his voice rising. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've lied to me, Clara. You've made me question everything about us." "I know," Clara said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. I never wanted to hurt you." Lucas stood there, his fists clenched at his sides. "Then why?" he demanded. "Why wasn't I enough?" Tears filled Clara's eyes as she struggled to answer. "It wasn't about you," she said finally. "It was about me. I've been feeling lost. Like I don't even know who I am anymore. And Adam, He made me feel alive again." Her words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He had always thought of their marriage as unshakable, but now he realized how fragile it had become. For the next few days, Lucas and Clara barely spoke. The tension in the house was suffocating. Lucas spent hours driving aimlessly, trying to make sense of his emotions. Part of him wanted to leave, to walk away and never look back. But another part of him couldn't let go of the life they had built together. Meanwhile, Clara tried to make amends. She deleted Adam's number, blocked him on social media, and promised Lucas that she would end things for good. But the damage had already been done, and Lucas wasn't sure if he could ever trust her again. One night, as they sat in silence at the dinner table, Clara finally broke down. "I don't want to lose you, Lucas," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Lucas looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I don't know if we can fix this," he said. "But if we're going to try, I need honesty. No more secrets, Clara. No more lies." "I promise," she said, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in weeks, they talked, really talked. Clara opened up about her feelings of loneliness and dissatisfaction, while Lucas admitted that he had been distant and preoccupied with work. It was a raw, painful conversation, but it was also the first step toward healing. As the days turned into weeks, Lucas and Clara began to rebuild their relationship, one small step at a time. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when Lucas wondered if it was even worth it. But slowly, they began to find their way back to each other. Their story was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope. Remember to live authentically. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Stories like this remind us of the power of love, trust, and second chances, even when the odds feel impossible. Lucas and Clara's attempts to rebuild their relationship were fragile at best. The promises made during their heartfelt conversation lingered like faint whispers in the air. Hopeful but unsteady. Trust, once shattered, wasn't something easily pieced back together, and while Clara had assured Lucas that her connection with Adam was over, the memory of her betrayal clung to him like a shadow, casting doubt on her every word. One evening, as Lucas returned home from work, he noticed Clara sitting by the window, staring out at the ocean. The golden hues of sunset bathed her face, but there was a tension in her expression that caught his attention. "What's on your mind?" he asked, setting his bag down. Clara hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "I got an email from Adam," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas felt his chest tighten. What did he say? "He wanted to meet," she admitted. "To talk," he said. "But I didn't respond, I just thought you should know." Lucas stared at her, his mind racing. Part of him appreciated her honesty, but another part wondered if this was just the beginning of something worse. "Do you want to meet him?" he asked, his voice even. "No," Clara said quickly. I don't know why he's reaching out again." Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable. "Well, if he contacts you again, let me know." Clara agreed, but Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that Adam wasn't done inserting himself into their lives. The following week, the tension between Lucas and Clara reached a boiling point. Lucas was working late one evening when he received a call from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something compelled him to answer. "Lucas?" The voice on the other end said. It was Adam. Lucas felt a surge of anger. "What do you want?" "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Adam said, his tone calm. "But Clara and I have unresolved things we need to discuss. I think it's only fair." "Fair," Lucas repeated, his voice rising. "You think it's fair to interfere in our marriage after everything you've done?" "Look," Adam said, his voice hardening. "I'm not trying to take her away from you. But I have a right to talk to her. Lucas clenched his jaw, his grip tightening on the phone. Stay away from her, he said, his voice low and threatening. You've done enough damage. He hung up, his heart pounding. The audacity of Adam to contact him directly only fueled Lucas's frustration. That night, as he lay beside Clara in bed, he couldn't bring himself to tell her about the call. He didn't want to reopen old wounds, or give Adam any more power over their lives. Despite Lucas's warning, Adam's presence continued to loom over their lives like a storm cloud. Clara tried her best to focus on her photography and their relationship, but Lucas could tell she was struggling. She seemed distracted, her usual spark dimmed by the weight of their unresolved issues. One evening, Lucas came home to find Clara sitting at the dining table, her laptop open in front of her. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed as though she had been crying. "What's wrong?" Lucas asked, his voice filled with concern. She hesitated, then turned the laptop toward him. "He sent me this." On the screen was an email from Adam. It was long and emotional, recounting their history together and expressing his lingering feelings for her. He apologized for his role in the affair, but insisted that he couldn't move on without closure. Lucas read the email, his hands trembling with anger. "Why didn't you block him?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "I thought I had," Clara said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how he keeps finding ways to contact me." Lucas paced the room, his thoughts racing. "We need to put an end to this," he said finally. "Together." The next day, Lucas and Clara agreed to meet Adam in a neutral, public setting. They chose a small cafe on the edge of town, a place where they wouldn't be overheard. Clara was visibly nervous as they arrived, her hands trembling as she clutched her coffee cup. Adam was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when they approached, his expression a mixture of guilt and resolve. Lucas felt a surge of anger at the sight of him, but forced himself to stay calm. The conversation was tense from the start. Adam apologized again, but his words felt hollow to Lucas. He couldn't shake the feeling that Adam's intentions were less noble than he claimed. "I just want to clear the air," Adam said, looking directly at Clara. "I know I made a mistake, but I also know how much you meant to me." "Stop," Lucas said, his voice cold. "You don't get to say things like that anymore." Adam shifted uncomfortably, but didn't back down. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he insisted. "I just want to move forward." Lucas clenched his fists under the table, his patience wearing thin. "The best way for you to move forward is to stay out of our lives," he said. Clara, who had been silent for most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "Adam, I'm sorry for everything that happened. But Lucas is right. We need to move on, separately." Adam looked at her, his expression pained. "If that's what you want," he said finally, "I'll respect your wishes." The tension in the room eased slightly as Adam stood to leave. But as he walked away, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last they would hear from him. In the weeks that followed, Lucas and Clara tried to regain a sense of normalcy. They focused on spending quality time together, rebuilding their trust and connection. Slowly but surely, things began to improve. But just as they started to feel like they were on solid ground, another twist threatened to upend everything. One afternoon, Lucas received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a photo of Clara and Adam together, taken during the height of their affair. Lucas felt his heart sink. The photo wasn't just a reminder of Clara's betrayal. It was evidence that someone else knew their secret. When he showed the photo to Clara, she was horrified. "Who would send this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Lucas said, his mind racing. "But whoever it is, they want to hurt us." The revelation set off a new wave of tension between them. As they tried to uncover the sender's identity, Old wounds were reopened, and the fragile trust they had rebuilt began to fray once again. The momentum of the story builds toward its climax as Lucas and Clara realize they aren't just fighting for their marriage. They're fighting against an unseen force determined to tear them apart. The stakes have never been higher, and every decision they make will determine the future of their relationship. The anonymous photo sent shockwaves through Lucas and Clara's already fragile relationship. For days, the image sat on their dining table, an ominous reminder that their secrets were no longer confined to their private lives. The question of who had sent it, and why, hung over them like a dark cloud. Lucas paced the living room, his frustration bubbling over. Someone is trying to mess with us. We need to figure out who. Clara, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, looked pale and shaken. It could be Adam, she said hesitantly. Maybe he's upset about how we ended things. Lucas stopped in his tracks, the possibility igniting a fresh wave of anger. If this is his way of getting revenge, he's crossed a line. They decided to confront Adam directly. Lucas wasn't one to let threats linger in the shadows, and Clara agreed that clarity, no matter how painful, was better than living in fear. The confrontation with Adam was tense and explosive. They met him at his apartment, and the moment he opened the door, Lucas wasted no time. "Did you send this?" he demanded, thrusting the photo toward him. Adam looked genuinely confused as he took the photo. "What, no?" he said, shaking his head. "I didn't send this." Clara, her voice trembling, added, "Adam, if this is some kind of game, it needs to stop your tearing us apart." Adam's expression softened as he looked at Clara. "I swear I didn't send it. Why would I? I've already told you I'm trying to move on." Lucas stared at him, searching for any hint of deception, but Adam seemed sincere. Still, the lack of answers only deepened the mystery. As they left Adam's apartment, Lucas turned to Clara. "If it wasn't him, then who else knows about this?" Clara shook her head, her face etched with worry. "I don't know, I've been so careful." The tension between them reached a breaking point. Later that night, Lucas couldn't help but voice the thoughts that had been plaguing him. "How many people did you involve in this mess, Clara? Are there others who might know?" Clara bristled at his accusatory tone. "I've told you everything, Lucas. I didn't ask for any of this to happen." The argument spiraled out of control, each of them throwing accusations and defenses at the other. By the end of it, they were left emotionally drained, retreating to separate corners of the house. Days turned into weeks, and the sender of the photo remained a mystery. But the cracks in Lucas and Clara's relationship grew deeper. Lucas threw himself into work, using it as a distraction from the turmoil at home. Clara, meanwhile, retreated into her photography, spending long hours away from the house. One evening, as Lucas was reviewing blueprints in his office, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was another anonymous sender, this time with a chilling text. "You don't know the full story, meet me if you want the truth." Attached was a location, a small park on the outskirts of town. Lucas stared at the message, his heart pounding. Was this a trap? Or was it the key to unraveling the mystery that had consumed his life? Lucas decided to go, but he didn't tell Clara. He wasn't sure if he could trust her judgment anymore. The park was deserted when he arrived. The only sounds the rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a cricket. A figure emerged from the shadows. A woman Lucas didn't recognize. She looked nervous, glancing around as if afraid of being seen. "Are you the one who sent the photo?" Lucas asked, his voice steady but firm. The woman nodded. "I needed you to know the truth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas frowned, his patience wearing thin. "What truth?" The woman hesitated, then handed him a folder. "It's all in here. I found out what Clara and Adam were doing, and I couldn't stay quiet." Lucas opened the folder, his breath catching as he scanned its contents. There were more photos, intimate moments between Clara and Adam, and copies of emails that painted a far darker picture of their relationship than Clara had ever admitted. He looked up at the woman, his anger boiling over. "Why are you involved in this?" She looked away, shame flickering across her face. "Adam is my brother. He told me about Clara, about what they had. I thought you deserved to know." Lucas clenched his fists, the betrayal cutting deeper than he thought possible. "And you thought this was the way to help by sending anonymous threats?" "I didn't know what else to do," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry." Lucas didn't respond. He left the park with the folder in hand, his mind racing with the implications of what he had just learned. When Lucas returned home, Clara was waiting for him. She immediately noticed the folder in his hand and the stormy expression on his face. "What's that?" she asked, her voice laced with apprehension. "More lies," Lucas said coldly, tossing the folder onto the table. Clara flipped through the contents, her face paling with each page. "Lucas, I can explain." "No more explanations," he snapped. "You told me it was over, that you had been honest with me. But this proves you've been lying from the start." Clara broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know he kept those emails, I thought it was in the past." Lucas shook his head, his voice filled with bitterness. "The past doesn't stay buried, Clara. Not when you build it on lies." For the first time, Clara didn't try to defend herself. She simply sat there, defeated, as Lucas walked away. The days that followed were a blur of silence and tension. Lucas couldn't bring himself to look at Clara, and she seemed to have given up trying to reach him. The love that had once bound them together now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a chasm of mistrust and regret. But the final blow came when Lucas received another message from Adam's sister. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a revelation. Adam hadn't just been Clara's lover. He had been planning to blackmail her, threatening to expose their affair if she didn't continue seeing him. Lucas confronted Clara with the new information, his voice shaking with fury. "You knew he was dangerous, and you still let him into our lives." "I didn't know what to do," Clara cried. "I thought if I ignored him, he'd go away. I never wanted you to find out like this." Lucas stared at her, his heart breaking all over again. "You should have trusted me," he said quietly. "We could have faced this together." The story barrels toward its climax as Lucas realizes that his fight isn't just about saving his marriage, it's about reclaiming his sense of self. The betrayal, the lies, and the looming threat of Adam's manipulation have pushed him to the brink, forcing him to make a choice. Stay and rebuild or walk away for good. Lucas was at his breaking point. The new revelation about Adam's blackmailing scheme wasn't just another betrayal. It was the tipping point that threatened to unravel everything. The love he once felt for Clara was now buried beneath layers of anger, mistrust, and exhaustion. That evening, as Clara sat across from him at the dining table, Lucas could feel the weight of her gaze. She was waiting for him to say something, to offer a lifeline that might save what was left of their marriage. But Lucas couldn't bring himself to look at her. "I don't even know who you are anymore," he said finally, his voice low but laced with pain. Clara flinched at his words, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "I never meant for it to get this far," she said, her voice cracking. "I was scared, Lucas. Scared of losing you. Scared of what Adam might do if I told you the truth." Lucas shook his head, bitterness creeping into his tone. "You didn't just lie to me. You chose to protect him over us." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I was trying to protect you too. I didn't want you to get hurt." "Too late," Lucas replied, his voice hollow. The silence that followed was suffocating. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. each unspoken word a dagger between them. For the first time, Lucas realized that the person sitting across from him wasn't the woman he thought he had married. The next day, Lucas decided he needed space. He packed a small bag and left a note on the kitchen counter. "I need time to think. Don't call me." He drove aimlessly for hours, eventually ending up at a motel on the outskirts of town. The sterile, impersonal room was a stark contrast to the warmth of his home, but it offered him the solitude he so desperately needed. Lucas spent the night replaying the events of the past few months in his mind. He thought about the love he and Clara had once shared, the dreams they had built together, and the betrayal that had shattered it all. A part of him wanted to fight for their marriage, to find a way to forgive her and move forward. But another part of him wondered if it was too late, if the damage was simply too great to repair. Meanwhile, Clara was at home, grappling with her own guilt and fear. The house felt unbearably empty without Lucas, and every room seemed to echo with memories of happier times. She spent hours staring at her phone, debating whether to call him, despite his request for space. In the end, she decided against it, knowing that pushing him now would only make things worse. But Clara wasn't alone in her turmoil. Adam's sister, the mysterious woman who had sent the incriminating photos and emails, reached out to her directly. They met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," the woman said, her voice filled with regret. "But Adam was spiraling. He became obsessed with you, and I thought exposing the truth might help him let go." Clara stared at her, a mix of anger and disbelief washing over her. "You thought ruining my life was the answer." "I didn't know what else to do," the woman admitted. "I was trying to protect him, but I see now that I made everything worse." Clara's hands trembled as she took a sip of her coffee. "You have no idea what you've done. Lucas might never forgive me because of you." The woman looked genuinely remorseful. "If there's anything I can do to help, please tell me." Clara hesitated, her mind racing. She wasn't sure if there was anything left to salvage, but she couldn't let go of the hope that she and Lucas might still find a way back to each other. Lucas returned home a few days later, his mind still clouded with uncertainty. Clara greeted him at the door, her expression a mixture of relief and trepidation. She had been preparing herself for this moment, unsure of what he would say, or if he would say anything at all. "I'm not here to talk," Lucas said curtly as he brushed past her. "I just need to grab some things." Clara followed him into the bedroom, her heart pounding. "Lucas, please, we can't keep avoiding this." Lucas stopped in his tracks, his shoulders tense. "Avoiding what, Clara? The fact that our marriage is a lie, that you've been lying to me for months?" "It's not a lie," she said desperately. "What we had, it was real, it still is." Lucas turned to face her, his eyes filled with pain. "Was it real when you were sneaking around with Adam? Was it real when you hid the truth from me over and over again?" Clara's voice broke as she replied, "I made mistakes, Lucas. I know that. But I love you. Doesn't that mean anything?" Lucas stared at her for a long moment, his emotions warring within him. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. "Love isn't enough, Clara. Not anymore." That night, Lucas slept in the guest room, the emotional distance between them now a physical one as well. Clara lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering how they had reached this point. She thought about all the times she could have told Lucas the truth, all the chances she had missed to fix things before they fell apart. But regret wouldn't change anything now. If she wanted to save their marriage, she knew she had to take action. The turning point came unexpectedly. Lucas received a call from his office manager, informing him that someone had been trying to access his work emails. The culprit was none other than Adam Furious. Lucas drove to Adam's apartment, determined to put an end to his interference once and for all. When Adam opened the door, He looked surprised, but not intimidated. "Lucas," he said calmly, "what brings you here?" "Cut the crap," Lucas snapped. "I know you've been trying to hack into my emails. What the hell are you up to?" Adam smirked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Relax. I was just looking for some leverage. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" Lucas repeated, his anger boiling over. "You've destroyed my life, my marriage, and now you're trying to sabotage my work. What kind of person does that?" Adam's expression darkened. "Don't act like you're innocent in all this. Clara was the one who came to me. Remember, she was the one who couldn't stay away." Lucas clenched his fists, his entire body trembling with rage. "You're pathetic," he said, his voice cold. "Stay out of our lives, or I swear you'll regret it." He turned and walked away, leaving Adam standing in the doorway. But as Lucas drove home, he couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation wasn't over. When he returned, Clara was waiting for him in the living room. She stood as he entered, her eyes filled with determination. "Lucas, I know I've hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm not giving up on us." Lucas sighed, his exhaustion evident. "Clara, I don't know if there's anything left to save." "There is," she said firmly. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. Just tell me what you need." Lucas looked at her, his heart heavy. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope, just a little, that they might still have a chance. The tension continues to build as Lucas and Clara confront the deepest wounds in their relationship, leading to a pivotal decision that will determine their future. Every choice, every word, feels like a step closer to the climax, one that will either bring resolution or tear them apart for good. Lucas stood by the window, staring out into the darkness. The events of the past few weeks had left him emotionally drained, yet his mind refused to stop racing. Clara's pleas for a second chance echoed in his ears, but every time he considered forgiveness, the image of her betrayal came flooding back. It wasn't just about Adam. It was about the lies, the deception, and the unbearable weight of broken trust. Meanwhile, Clara sat at the dining table, her hands clasped tightly together. She could feel the distance between them growing by the second, and it terrified her. She had made mistakes, unforgivable ones, but she wasn't ready to let go of the life they had built together. She needed Lucas to see that their love was still worth fighting for. "Lucas," she said softly, breaking the silence. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I need you to hear me out." He turned to face her, his expression guarded. "What is there left to say, Clara? I've heard it all before." "This is different," she insisted. "I need to tell you the whole truth." Lucas crossed his arms, leaning against the window frame. "I'm listening." Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to say. "It wasn't just about Adam," she began. "I mean, yes, I made a terrible mistake with him. But it didn't start with him. It started with me. I've been lost, Lucas, for a long time." Her voice trembled as she continued. "When we got married, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I knew who I was and what I wanted. But somewhere along the way, I started to lose myself. I felt like I was just existing. Like I didn't know who I was outside of being your wife." Lucas's expression softened. Though he said nothing, Clara took it as a sign to keep going. "Adam wasn't the answer," she admitted. "He was a distraction, a way for me to escape the things I didn't want to face. I know that doesn't excuse what I did, but I need you to understand that it was never about you. It was about me." Lucas let out a heavy sigh, his gaze fixed on the floor. "You could have talked to me, Clara. We could have worked through it together." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "And I'll regret not doing that for the rest of my life. But I'm here now, Lucas. I'm ready to face it." All of it. With you. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for the first time in weeks, Lucas allowed himself to feel the depth of her pain. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, the raw vulnerability she had been hiding for so long. But was it enough? Before he could respond, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. It was Adam. "Are you going to answer it?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Lucas said, silencing the call. But the tension was back, heavier than ever. Later that night, Lucas sat alone in the guest room, staring at the phone in his hand. Adam's persistence was infuriating, but it also made Lucas question his motives. What did Adam want? Why couldn't he just let them move on? Unable to resist, Lucas opened the message Adam had left. "We need to talk. There's something you don't know about Clara." Lucas's heart sank. He didn't want to believe Adam's words, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Was Clara still hiding something from him? And if so, could he handle another revelation? The next morning, Lucas confronted Clara. She was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee, when he walked in with his phone in hand. "What is this?" he asked, showing her the message from Adam. Clara's face paled as she read it. "I don't know," she said, her voice shaky. "I have no idea what he's talking about." Lucas studied her closely, searching for any hint of dishonesty. "If there's something you haven't told me, Clara, now is the time. No more secrets." "There's nothing," she insisted, her eyes welling with tears. "I swear, Lucas, I've told you everything." He wanted to believe her, but Adam's words lingered in his mind. "Then why won't he leave us alone?" Lucas asked, his frustration evident. "What does he want?" "I don't know," Clara said, her voice breaking. "But I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Just tell me what to do." Lucas decided he needed answers, and he wasn't going to get them by staying silent. Against his better judgment, he agreed to meet Adam one last time. They arranged to meet at a small diner on the edge of town, away from prying eyes. When Lucas arrived, Adam was already there, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked up as Lucas approached, his expression unreadable. "You have 5 minutes," Lucas said curtly as he sat down. Adam leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You deserve to know the truth," he said. "Clara hasn't told you everything." Lucas clenched his fists under the table, his patience wearing thin. "Get to the point." Adam took a deep breath. "Before Clara and I reconnected, we had a history she didn't tell you, did she? That I was her first love." Lucas froze, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" "We dated in college," Adam explained. "We were serious, at least, I thought we were. But then she broke it off, said she needed to focus on herself. I moved on, or at least I tried to. But when I saw her again, all those feelings came rushing back." Lucas stared at him, his mind racing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know the whole story," Adam said. "Clara didn't just make a mistake. She chose me once, and a part of her still does." The words sent a surge of anger through Lucas, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You're wrong," he said through gritted teeth. "She chose me. She married me. Whatever you had. It's over." Adam smirked, as if he didn't believe him. "If you're so sure, then why are you here?" Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Stay away from us," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is the last time I'm going to say it." As he walked out of the diner, Lucas felt a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, and a deep, gnawing uncertainty. Adam's words had shaken him, but he refused to let them dictate his future. Clara had made mistakes, but so had he. If they were going to move forward, they needed to leave the past behind once and for all. When Lucas returned home, Clara was waiting for him. She looked up as he entered, her expression filled with apprehension. "What did he say?" she asked. Lucas hesitated, then shook his head. "It doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is us." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "I want to move forward, Lucas. I want to rebuild what we lost." "So do I," Lucas said, his voice firm. "But it's going to take time, and it's going to take honesty, complete honesty." Clara reached for his hand, her grip firm. "You'll have it, I promise." The tension continues to build as Lucas and Clara face the final test of their relationship. The stakes are higher than ever, and the choices they make in the coming days will determine whether they can truly leave the past behind, or if it will destroy them for good. Lucas's resolve to move forward was met with more challenges than he had anticipated. Despite their promises to rebuild, the scars of betrayal lingered between him and Clara, like shadows that refused to fade. Each day was a test, every interaction fraught with the tension of unspoken fears and unresolved doubts. For Lucas, the hardest part was believing that Clara was truly committed to making things right. For Clara, it was proving to Lucas, and to herself, that she deserved a second chance. Their fragile peace was shattered one night, when a car pulled up outside their house. Lucas glanced out the window and froze. Adam was back. Clara joined him at the window, her face draining of color as she recognized the car. "What is he doing here?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Lucas didn't answer. He marched to the front door and flung it open just as Adam was about to knock. "What the hell are you doing here?" Lucas demanded, his voice sharp. Adam raised his hands in mock surrender, his expression calm but determined. "I need to talk to Clara." "She doesn't want to talk to you," Lucas snapped, stepping in front of Clara, who had appeared in the doorway. "You're done interfering in our lives." Adam's gaze shifted to Clara. "Is that true? Are you really done with me?" Clara stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "Yes, Adam, I am. You need to leave us alone." Adam's expression hardened. "You think you can just walk away after everything we've been through?" Lucas moved closer, his fists clenched. "Get out of here, Adam, now." For a moment, it seemed like Adam might resist, but then he nodded, his smirk returning. "You're making a mistake, Clara. But fine, I'll go, for now." As Adam walked back to his car, Lucas slammed the door shut, his chest heaving with anger. "This has to stop," he said, turning to Clara. "He's not going to let us move on." "I'll file a restraining order," Clara said, her voice shaking. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep him away." Lucas nodded, but the encounter had left him rattled. He couldn't shake the feeling that Adam's obsession wasn't over. The next morning, Clara went to the police station to file the restraining order. Lucas accompanied her, his presence a silent show of support. As she explained the situation to the officer, Lucas felt a pang of guilt. Despite his anger, he couldn't deny that Clara was trying, really trying, to make things right. When they returned home, Lucas decided to address the elephant in the room. "Clara, I need to know, was there anything Adam said that was true about your feelings for him?" Clara met his gaze, her expression earnest. "I won't lie to you, Lucas. When we reconnected, I was confused. He brought back memories of a time when I felt free, when I didn't feel so lost. But it wasn't real. What we had wasn't love. It was a distraction." Lucas took a deep breath, his emotions a whirlwind. "And now? What do you feel now?" "I feel like I made the biggest mistake of my life," Clara said, her voice breaking. "I want to fix this, Lucas. I want to fix us." Her words were raw, vulnerable, and they struck a chord in Lucas. He still wasn't sure if he could forgive her, but for the first time, he felt like they were on the same side. Just as things seemed to be settling, another twist threatened to derail their progress. One evening, Lucas received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated but answered. "Lucas," the voice said. It was Adam. "I'm not done with you." "What do you want?" Lucas demanded, his grip tightening on the phone. "You think you can just erase me?" Adam said, his tone menacing. "I have proof, Lucas, proof that Clara isn't as innocent as she claims." Lucas felt his heart sink. "What are you talking about?" "Check your email," Adam said before hanging up. Lucas rushed to his laptop, his hands shaking as he opened his inbox. There, in bold letters, was an email from Adam attached, were photos, messages, and emails between him and Clara, evidence of their affair. But what caught Lucas's attention was a video file. He clicked on it, his stomach churning. The video showed Clara and Adam in a heated argument. Clara's voice was clear. "I never loved you, Adam. It was a mistake I'm choosing, Lucas." Lucas felt a surge of conflicting emotions. On one hand, the video confirmed Clara's commitment to him. On the other, it was a painful reminder of everything they had been through. When Clara walked into the room, Lucas showed her the video. She watched it in silence, her face a mix of guilt and relief. "I meant every word," she said quietly. "I chose you. Lucas, I'll always choose you." Lucas stared at her, his heart heavy. Then why does it still feel like we're fighting a losing battle? The video marked a turning point in their relationship. Lucas realized that while Clara had made mistakes, she was genuinely trying to make amends. But he also knew that forgiveness was a process, one that required time, effort, and a willingness to let go of the past. Clara, for her part, threw herself into rebuilding their life together. She started attending therapy, working through the insecurities and fears that had led her down the wrong path. Lucas joined her for some sessions, and though it was difficult, it was also healing. But Adam wasn't done causing trouble. Despite the restraining order, he continued to send messages and make veiled threats. One night, as Lucas and Clara were sitting on the couch, they heard the sound of glass shattering in the kitchen. Lucas rushed to investigate, finding a brick on the floor and a note attached to it. "You can't keep me out forever." The tension reached its peak as Lucas and Clara realized they had to take decisive action. They contacted the police, who launched an investigation into Adam's harassment. For the first time, Lucas felt like they were regaining control of their lives. But the most pivotal moment came during a confrontation Lucas hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as he was leaving work, Adam cornered him in the parking lot. "You think you've won?" Adam sneered. "You think she's worth it?" Lucas didn't flinch. "Stay away from us, Adam. You've already done enough damage." Adam smirked, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "She'll hurt you again. You'll see." Lucas stepped closer, his voice steady. "Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But that's not your business. This is our life, not yours." For the first time, Adam seemed at a loss for words. He walked away, leaving Lucas standing tall, finally feeling a sense of closure. Lucas returned home that evening, exhausted but hopeful. He found Clara in the kitchen, cooking dinner, a sight that brought a small smile to his face. For the first time in months, the weight on his chest felt lighter. "We're going to be okay," Lucas said, his voice filled with quiet conviction. Clara looked at him, her eyes brimming with emotion. "I believe that too." As they sat down to eat, the air between them felt different, less heavy, more hopeful. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't be for a long time, but for the first time in months, they both believed they could make it through together. The stage is now set for the climax of their story. Lucas and Clara have fought through betrayal, fear, and outside interference to reach this point. The stakes have never been higher, and the decisions they make next will determine whether their love can truly survive, or if some wounds are too deep to heal. The morning after Adam's confrontation in the parking lot, Lucas woke up to a rare sense of calm. For months, his life had been a whirlwind of betrayal, heartbreak, and uncertainty. But something had shifted. His decision to stand firm against Adam and his willingness to start trusting Clara again felt like the first steps toward regaining control. Clara was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. She glanced up as Lucas entered, offering him a tentative smile. There was still a fragility in their relationship, but there was also something new, hope. As they sat down to eat, Clara reached across the table and took Lucas's hand. "I know we're not there yet," she said softly, "but I want you to know that I'm all in, whatever it takes." Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "I know," he said, "and I'm starting to believe that we can do this." That belief was put to the test when they received a call from the police later that day. Adam had been arrested for violating the restraining order. The brick through their window, combined with his harassment and threats, had finally caught up to him. As Clara hung up the phone, she let out a shaky breath. "It's over," she said, her voice filled with relief. Lucas nodded, but his expression was somber. "It's not over for us," he said. "There's still a lot we need to work through." Clara met his gaze, determination shining in her eyes. "And we will, together." In the weeks that followed, Lucas and Clara began the painstaking process of rebuilding their relationship. It wasn't easy trust. Once broken, doesn't come back overnight. But they were both committed to doing the work. Clara continued her therapy sessions, diving deep into the insecurities and fears that had led her astray. Lucas joined her for some of those sessions, and they began to uncover the root of their issues. Not just Clara's choices, but also the ways Lucas had unintentionally contributed to the distance between them. Through it all, they found small moments of connection, cooking dinner together, taking walks along the beach, and talking late into the night. It was during one of these conversations that Clara said something that stuck with Lucas. "I think I was scared of how perfect everything seemed," she admitted. "I felt like I didn't deserve it, like I was waiting for it all to fall apart." Lucas took her hand, his grip firm. "It doesn't have to be perfect," he said. "It just has to be real." Months passed, and the wounds of the past began to heal Lucas, and Clara's relationship was far from the idyllic picture it had once been, but it was stronger in a different way. They had faced their demons, both individually and together, and come out on the other side. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Clara turned to Lucas. "I don't think I've ever told you this, but thank you. For staying. For giving us another chance." Lucas smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "You gave me a reason to stay," he said. "You fought for us when I didn't think there was anything left to fight for." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the air. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lucas felt at peace. The final chapter of their story came in the form of a decision, a choice to move forward, not just as a couple, but as individuals who had grown and changed. Clara decided to scale back her photography work, to focus on projects that truly inspired her. Lucas, inspired by her courage, started volunteering his architectural skills for local community projects, finding fulfillment in giving back. But the most important change wasn't in their careers or routines. It was in how they approached each other. They learned to communicate openly, to be vulnerable, even when it was uncomfortable. They made a pact to prioritize their relationship, no matter what challenges came their way. The last scene of their journey was a quiet one. Lucas and Clara stood on the beach, hand in hand, watching the waves roll in. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, the perfect backdrop for the moment. "We've come a long way," Clara said, her voice filled with emotion. "We have," Lucas agreed, "and I think we're just getting started." As they stood there, the future stretched out before them, uncertain but full of possibilities. They knew there would be more challenges, more tests of their love and commitment. But they also knew that they had the strength to face them together. Every story of betrayal and heartbreak has the potential for redemption, but it takes courage, honesty, and a willingness to fight for what matters most. Lucas and Clara's journey wasn't easy, but it showed that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, effort, and love. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. We explore powerful stories like this one, filled with twists, turns, and lessons about the human heart. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.